Hello everyone, this is the next part in my series on building an interior for the Vega model. This part is on the center console, which I've made a separate part because it was rather complicated to construct, even though it looks simple in the photo. Notice the shape is really irregular. That's the main thing that made this difficult to do. I spent almost as much time on this as I did on the dashboard, actually. So here I'm taking some segments out of the bell housing, because obviously it has to be built on the bell housing. I'm adding that notch there behind where the handbrake is supposed to go. And a lot of this will get modded as I move on. So there's the side of the bell housing being put back in place. Notice it's a little bit lower, and as far as I know, that's prototypical. As far as I know, it's correct. I don't have drawings. I'll reiterate that my measurements on this are probably all wrong. So this is all guesswork, and in fact, even that lowering of the notch there is a guess. I am leaving room there for the differential box, which is prototypical, but I don't know if the measurements are right. I'll adjust these again, all of these measurements again, when I put in the seats, because the seats, I'm pretty sure that they're closer to scale than the rest of the model because I had better sources for them. So anyway, I'm putting the sides on what's basically a slot where the handbrake goes in. This is a similar design to the C3 Corvette, actually, but I think that this console is different. I don't think this is a Corvette console. I think it was distinct to the Vega, or yeah, probably to the Vega, because the Vega was a stick shift, but it wasn't a Corvette, bottom line. This one, strangely enough, the interior that I'm building a model of is an automatic transmission interior. That will come next. See me do that. This is going to be the handbrake. So I created a cylinder, and I'm going to stretch it and scale it and stretch it and scale it until it is the correct proportions. Measurements would be the wrong word because, as I said, I don't have the drawings. So I'm eyeing it, basically. This has got to be one of my less authentic models, unfortunately. It's mainly for looks. And it will look far better with an interior model than it will look without an interior model. So anyway, I add a grip to the handle there. I put in 4 loop subdivisions. And then the center bit there of the grip I've created will be expanded with the scale tool. But first I have to put in these loops. You'll notice I'm skipping a lot of steps in the video to save time. I mean, this is because it took me so long to do this that I've had to drastically edit this. Okay, so I scale it out, and of course the ends of it now are stretched out because of the way the scale tool in Blender works, so I push in the ends there, just moving those vertices on the axis. I move it into place, center it, and then I have to rebuild the back of that console housing and try and connect the lever as best I can. I do have to angle it down because the actual real-life design has an angle right there. I think to provide more leverage, pretty much. So I have to rebuild the back of the housing to fit what was supposed to go in there all along. And it doesn't look too bad in my opinion. Otherwise I would be still fiddling with it. Then I have to remove the faces up in front of it because the front of the bell housing is going to have to be split up a bit with more of the loop subdivide tool there. And the shifter for an automatic transmission on a Vega is in a box of sorts on top of the bell housing that forms, I guess you could say, part of the console. I'm counting it as such. So I'm putting a place for it there, and then up ahead of that, I'm just going to fill that in. I'm trying to use more vertices ahead than behind. I might change that later. We'll see. But the box itself can be done much more simply. Here I'm extruding from that edge. It's the best way to do it. And see, in the back I've left that untouched because I have to merge those vertices in the middle there, as you can see. Then lower the back of it because it's slanted. Then there's another box that has to go inside that box, which is the slot for the shifter. So I create another cube with the mesh tool. I scale it, move it into place, fiddle with it until it fits right. Here I'm skipping a whole bunch of steps, of course, to make this 10 minutes. So I move it over. It is biased to the driver's side, which makes sense. It has to be slanted. I have to remove the face there to fit the shifter shaft in there. Then I put in a face on top of the box, not including the slot, of course. I rush it there, and then I have to one more scale before creating the shaft. Again, it's a very simple 8-segment cylinder. I scale it down, I rotate it, and I stretch it to fit. Really as simple as that. And this one I chose to stretch a little bit before I rotated it, because, well, it doesn't really need much rotation at all. It fits just fine as it is. It does need to be moved down though, and it needs to be stretched a little bit more because I don't know the exact length of the real one, but it is a little bit longer than I had it initially. So it has to be a little bit higher. Then I put the knob on it. That's the next step, but only after I link it to the bottom of that slot. This is, again, good modeling practice generally. So then I create the knob by creating a sphere, 8 segments as before. I'm keeping the segments down because when you're working in these smaller sizes, it tends to improve your frame rate and create fewer errors. Center it perfectly on the shaft there. And on the automatic transmission on the Vega, this knob was not perfectly round. The manual I think was, but the automatic was one of these more egg-shaped knobs with a button on top to unlock the shifter. So I have to first connect this sphere, this spherical knob, and then I have to stretch it, as you see here. And this is still not the correct shape. I have to shrink the bottom to taper it. I select all those vertices and I scale down and I get a taper. And the top will have the button on it, so I have to get rid of that round top there. And the way that will work, I select all these vertices. Of course, I'm going to rush ahead. That goes without saying because I don't have a lot of time to do this. So then I create an edge across, I subdivide it, I build up a temporary face on the top like a pizza, as you can see here in triangles. And then I will subdivide each of these edges, because if I do it this way, those edges will be left hanging when I delete the face, believe it or not. So delete the center vertex to get rid of the face, and there are all those edges and vertices all ready to be turned into segments. So I'm going to rush through this again. And you can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the button right in the middle there. So to do that, I go to the top view after selecting all the inner vertices there. So I scale, and then I extrude, and I get my button. That's more or less realistic, I think. I don't know if the dimensions are exactly right, but the proportions are more or less correct. Then I create the real face that I'm going to keep the same way I created the temporary one. Put an edge, subdivide it, and build it up like a pizza. Rush ahead, and there's my shifter. And that's basically the center console that I'm going to go with for now. It will be rescaled when I put the seats in. Thanks for watching.